and we're going to touch base on some of them, some of the highlights that we have with the electoral votes, who they have decided on December 14, and also the cyber attack that is on the front line that is happening right now currently in the United States. One of the top story this week that is happening, and I'm going to get into more details and more update news on what is going on with those situations. So we're going to cover a few topics today, and so we're going to go ahead and start with the electoral votes. The 538 Congress electoral vote cast their president on December 14 for Joe Biden, announcing that he is the president-elect once again with the congressman electoral votes. The GOP are holding back, waiting until January 6th to congratulate Biden as they stick with President Donald Trump litany of legal challenges and claims of fraud. So that is still pending and still happening as well. Mitch McConnell miraculously opposed Trump's January 6th last-ditch effort to overturn election and congratulate Joe Biden on the floor of the Senate. Moreover, GOP lawmakers said the June 6th vote in Congress to accept the Electoral College outcome may be done when the presidential winner becomes official. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has signaled that January 20 is the certain date when the country is going to have the sworn in as the next president. So January 20th is the day which cannot be changed, and they have to have the president by then who is going to be sworn in. But January 6th is definitely a very important day for a lot of people to keep an eye on, because that's when they're going to finalize their electoral votes with majority of the congressmen. Going on, if you guys have heard about Attorney General William Barr, who has resigned this week actually, and sent in a resignation letter. Attorney General William Barr signed a resignation letter stating that he will resign before Christmas, and the pursuit of fraud allegations will continue. His reason for resigning is still unknown. Trump tweeted on Monday, "Just had a very nice meeting with Attorney General William Barr at the White House. Our relationship has been a very good one. He has done an outstanding job. As per letter, Bill will be leaving just before Christmas to spend the holiday with his family. The new deputy that is announced for Trump is Attorney General Jeff Rosen. Will become the acting Attorney General for the president in the last few days that we have." So the resignation of William Barr is still unknown, is still being discovered. They're still talking about it right now in some of the major platforms that are from the conservative news as well. So we will find out in weeks ahead of why he had resigned, but so far he decided to take himself out. Going on, so the long shot on January 6th for Trump is 2 weeks before inauguration, Republican lawmakers who have yet to acknowledge President-elect Joe Biden's victory will have one last long shot chance to challenge the outcome of the election, showing Mr. Biden won 306 electoral votes to Mr. Trump's 232 electoral votes. On January 6th, the Senate and the House will convene to count the electoral votes and officially declare the winner of the election. So in the meanwhile, while we still have our president-elect, there's still allegations and prosecutions going on in the court system, and January 6th is the day they're supposed to announce their official, and then we will know who will be inaugurated. So there's a lot of hexes going on with the inauguration, so there's not a final statement on that yet for January 20th. Now, if you guys have heard a leaked video that went out on YouTube this week, it is a meeting between Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and the civil rights leader groups. They had a meeting that was about 1 hour and 16 minutes long. I'm maybe a little longer than that, to talk about all of the demands from the progressive and the agenda that has been going on since the police brutality against George Floyd and some of the historical police brutality that has been going on in the United States against black people as well. So they covered a lot of that in that leaked video. So it is on YouTube right now if anybody, wants to watch the whole entire thing. But on Tuesday, a video meeting between civil rights groups and Biden-Harris leaked on YouTube. The discussion was based on racism demands from the progressive and the police brutality on black citizens. President-elect Joe Biden blamed the defund the police movement for contributing to Democratic down-ballot losses this month, telling civilian rights leaders this week that they should proceed carefully on criminal justice issues. That's how they beating the hell out of us across the country, say Joe Biden, saying that we're talking about defunding the police. We're not. These are the words of our president-elect Joe Biden, making it clear to the civil rights leaders that we will not defund the police, and that we have to be a little bit more cautious on these issues. He said, we're not. We're talking about holding them accountable. Biden says Tuesday in a virtual meeting with the civil rights leader. So it's about the accountability, most likely. He continued to talk to them like children, basically letting them know loud and clear that he cannot pass any legislation through the Congress with all of these issues going on and his inauguration being blocked, the transition being blocked last few days by the constitutional lawmakers. It's already been difficult, and he will do nothing. He also stated that by 2040, whites will become the minority, and that blacks should work closely with Hispanics that has a larger diversity aggression on civil rights movement. So that was his final statement there in the virtual meeting in the video. And so he made it clear in what will happen during his presidency with all of the demands and all of the progressive movement that has been going on since March, since the beginning of all the riots and all of the chaos that's been going on in these different states. And it's basically a lookout in how we can overcome this in a better way to move forward. And predicting that in 2040, that the whites are going to be minority and that the Hispanics are going to take larger population of these communities as well, and that blacks should work with them. So these are some of the statements that came from him. And one of the most surprising, shocking thing that happened on Monday probably didn't affect many people, but this is very high rated in most corporates and most hires in the high-tech system, corporate. There was a Google outage. On Monday, December 14, most Google services from Gmail to YouTube to Google Drive had a massive downtime lasting over an hour on Monday. Across the world, users were not able to access emails and were locked out of ongoing Google meeting sessions. During the restoration of Google within an hour, all servers and the crash had become one of the biggest social media trends, causing a panic wave across businesses in many parts of the world. A Google spokesman spoke in this last few days. All services are now restored, apologizing to anyone affected and promising a through follow-up review to ensure this problem cannot reoccur in the future. Even though the outage was not really localized, downdetector.com recorded over 1 million issues on YouTube and almost 40,000 for Gmail for users in different parts of the world could have taken effect on this outage as well. So Now moving on to one of the most trending thing happening lately on all news are talking about it pretty much, including Fox News, Newsmax, and all the other platforms as well. Whether it's conservative news, I haven't heard much about the liberal news talking about it, but it's highly rated in the conservative news as well. There is a cyber attack on the U.S. The Department of Homeland Security Cybersecurity Unit has acknowledged that there's a serious cyber attack against the U.S. by Russia. The department is responsible for managing U.S. nuclear weapons, but the arsenal security had not been compromised. Tech giant Microsoft also said on Thursday that it had found malicious software in his system. Now, as big as, or how big the cyber attack is, there's still a lot of developing stories going on with that and how important it is, but it is announced that it has affected the security system and all the data and where everything else is more safely secure. That could affect a worldwide issue as well. America's top cyber agency, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency, CISA, gave a warning on Thursday saying this is highly complex and challenging. Critical infrastructure has been damaged, federal agencies and private sector companies compromised, and that the damage posed a grave threat. Now, how big the threat is, we won't know exactly yet. But this is definitely something that these cybersecurities are deeply looking into it and try to get it solved immediately. Now, whether it will get solved immediately, we don't know, because this has been going on for 6 months straight since the first hack that has taken into the United States, and they're just recognizing it right now. They're just recognizing it and talking about it. So many suspected that Russian government is responsible, but was denied. Although federal authorities have so far traced the attacks launched back to March, the full scope of the attack is still being investigated. So stay tuned for more updates on that. The stimulus check for the American people. So this is something the American people are hoping for, especially with all the lockdowns that are going on, people losing their businesses, families not being able to work because they're probably staying home with their kids, or they're at risk with COVID-19 with their underlying conditions. There's so much issues going on right now in the United States, especially California, New York, and all of these effects that have took place and how bad it's pushing people into poverty. So with the stimulus check, here are some of the updates for you. Trump been pushing on a second stimulus check for the American people, taking the leftover money from the CARE Act that he launched earlier this year. This would be a gift for the holiday season to help America with behind crisis finances. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell announced on December 16 that the next bill will include a second direct stimulus payment, but waiting on the approval by the Congress. The Republican and the Democrat are referring to the state of negotiations over $900 billion stimulus bill, which would be direct cash payments of $300 extra, along with $600 on unemployment checks in stimulus package. For the families, it would be the half of what you got last time, $1,200, and this year the second stimulus would be half of that. So you're looking at about $600 per eligible adult and the individuals in the family. So we're waiting for the approval from the Congress, what they have finalized, what their final decision is. But so far, the good news we know is that it will be going out to the American people. Going on to about the vaccine. So Moderna just got approved by the FDA 2 days ago, and it is now working on being distributed to hospitals and different parts of the world. So Mike Pence took the vaccine in public to give confidence back to the people, warning to people with certain allergies should not take it. So Mike Pence went on a public television while he was getting vaccinated 3 days ago. So as you guys remember, Bill Gates and mostly Bill Gates, who has been speaking out about the lockdown and the shutdown and why vaccine is very important, that we should be vaccinated before we can reopen the economy. So he announced that we should be back to some normalcy by the summer, and most likely in 2022. Including the leftist Democrats' long complaints on coronavirus deaths, forcing face masks, and destroying small businesses with shutdown. Even though Trump was mocked on the vaccine, he delivered, as he mentioned, with a vaccine that has a 95% effective and is approved by the FDA. So it's available, and the distribution is currently going out. So the bipartisan proposal would provide $16 billion for vaccine development and the distribution, along with funding coronavirus tests and contact tracing efforts. So now let's move on to what is going on around the world other than United States. In the last few weeks, you guys probably have heard about the war in Ethiopia, the crisis that is taking on in Ethiopia, and what are the effects now. So with the war in Ethiopia, let me go back to give you guys a little introduction how it all began and where it is now at this point. About a month ago, a war broke out between the local government of TPLF, which are the Tigray People Liberation, a group that makes up of only 6% Ethiopia population, and they are against the federal government of Ethiopia. The TPLF have been ruling Ethiopia in the last 30 years with some of the previous rulers you guys know, like Meles Zenawi. He was one of the recent leader in Ethiopia before he died of unknown illness, and was replaced on a temporary, and they had a temporary leader, Haile Mariam, who resigned and did not want to deal with the conflict of the country, in which now you have Abiy Ahmed, who was supposed to be there temporary until they find the actual Prime Minister of Ethiopia. So they were not, the TPLF were not interfering with the government of the country except for their own region. Ahmed blamed every conflict of the country to the TPLF, recognized to be the dominant party for their own intellectual. And members of the leadership Central Committee, head of international security, which divided the constitutional thinking. TPFL refused to participate in order to protect itself. The long-lasting conflict turned the people of Ethiopia to go against the current constitution and against the federal arrangement. In the past weeks, Abiy launched militias to Tigray people, affecting 2,700 people to flee the country, losing their livelihoods and facing starvation. The TPFL launched missiles to neighboring country Eritrea to turn their heads against Ethiopia. Ruler of Asmara and Tigray, who have fought side by side in 1991 due to the border issue during the Mengistu time, one of the Ethiopian emperors, Mengistu. Escalating the situation to a regional war, knowing that Eritrea has always been an ally of Ethiopia. Due to the history, Ethiopia coasted their blame on TPFL, affecting the civilians on their history. Moreover, as it has become a political regime, the civilians were given minimum to no choice but to leave their livelihood. And that is a sad reality that these people are facing right now as a refugee in their neighboring country, Sudan. The Tigray people want peace, but were not willing to accept a tyrant government. The same government that has been killing the Walaita and Oromo. 9,000 people were in jail between May and August of 2020 during the Oromo protests. If you guys remember the protest that broke out in May and was going on for a couple of months. An activist was dragged in the middle of the night, questioned Ahmed as an authoritarian. Meanwhile, the people of Tigray are claiming they are being singled out and attacked based on their ethnicity. And a lot of these majority of the attacks has been going on for a while because of the groups like TPLF who have worked under the terrorist group for many long time is affecting the citizens as well, where everybody in the whole entire ethnic group is being painted with the same brush. So the people suffering with the consequences now, the Tigray people are suffering with the consequences. Continuing on, the international relations and media got involved and many reports were made. The human rights have warned that if this continues, it could escalate. The conflict may not only threaten Ethiopia, but also threaten neighboring countries, Sudan, Eritrea, and Somalia as well. 3 years ago, the people of Ethiopia spoke loud and clear. The Prime Minister won't allow the mediator like Africa Union. They addressed that no government would allow to mediate with a terrorist group. And that's what they have been labeled as, the terrorist group. This leads to only one question. How is it possible for a man who was recognized as a Nobel Peace Prize winner and passed the peace between Ethiopia and Eritrea as well? So that's all the update that's been happening this week. Tune back in next Saturday for more headlines of what is going on here in the United States with the election and the politics and what is going on across the world as well. Thank you and have a wonderful night, and stay tuned for our talk show where we're going to touch on poverty and the wealth of Africa.
My whole life, my father told me stories about moving to the United States. He would tell me that his brother, my Uncle George, was already living here and let my father stay with him for a while. Through my Uncle George, my father was introduced to our cultural organization here in America, who helped him make connections, apply for college, find his first job, and adjust to life in a completely different culture than he was used to. The Cultural Association helped him get started on his new life. My Uncle George would bring my father with him to the annual Summer Cultural Groups Festival, and later, he would bring me. It was incredible to see so many people of all ages laughing and celebrating with food and song and dance. It brought back the best feelings of home and gave my father the opportunity to pass his culture, language, and values on to me. My father and Uncle George were very close, so when George died last year, my father wanted to honor his wishes to be buried with a traditional ceremony back at his birthplace. My father told me that because Uncle George had cultural group life insurance, he was able to afford to bring George home and have the traditional burial George wanted. Though my father had been able to honor my Uncle George's wishes, it got me thinking about my own family. One day, I'd have to make the same arrangements for my own parents, and my wife's parents as well. Of course, we would want to bring them home and honor their wishes, but it would be a financial hardship for our family. There were a lot of things to think about, even though I really didn't want to think about them at all. When my father told me about cultural group life insurance, he told me it's intended to help families when they need it the most. It's not tied to an employer, so no matter where my career takes me, I'll always have coverage. The more people who participate and the younger they are, the more it helps keep the insurance premiums down for the entire association. Because my parents have cultural group term life insurance, there will be money available to help me provide the kind of service I want to give my parents. And by joining, I can put my mind at ease and continue to celebrate our traditions into the future. With cultural group life insurance, I can worry less and spend more of my time celebrating with the people who matter most to me.